Hi, good afternoon, Adidas runners community. Welcome to your own personal workout. If you haven't met me before, my name is Di. I'm a performance manager at the Herzo Gym, and it's predominantly going to be me that is leading you through these sessions with a focus more on mobility and recovery on a Monday, and then a focus a little bit more on performance development, strength, conditioning on a Friday. So by now, I assume most of you are deep into your trail season training program. You're out on the road, in the forest, you're doing what you need to do to get ready for race day. But what I and what we as EXOS are going to do is help facilitate you making that start line. So we want to make sure you're staying healthy, you're staying fresh, so that you can perform optimally in your workout sessions, in your training, and then when you get to that race day, whenever that may be. So the goal here is to give you and create some resilience that is going to facilitate performance development. So with trail running season, it's a little bit different, as you guys are aware, to the road season. So it's different demands, different requirements on the body. As always, there's certain elements of the body that we're going to attack. So we're going to attack the key functional elements of the body. And I use the term function loosely because function is different depending on road, track season, trail season. You know, there's more demands on agility, being reactive, multi-planar movements as you work your way across those trails. But the fundamentals remain the same. So we could say it's an 80-20 principle. 80% of what we're going to do is very, very similar to what you've done with myself or my coaches in the past. But then it's the 20%, the nuances that are going to make it a little bit more different, a little bit more specific to the trail season. Some of those things that we're going to hit in terms of specificity is ramping up a little bit on the foot strength. So this is one of the benefits of being at home. We don't need to put shoes on. We're outside of those gym rules. So if you feel comfortable, I encourage you to go barefoot because strong feet is going to disseminate up through the whole body. Second thing is that the key joints are moving in multi-planar ways, which again is something that we usually do. But in this instance, we're probably going to put more of an emphasis on that in a reactive and agile way once we nail down the basics. So it's going to be developmental. This is going to be progressive throughout this home workout series. But then hopefully when we get back into the facility as well, we can build on what we've already created here as a foundation. As I said, and as I alluded to, it's the multi-direction, multi-planar movements are going to complete that set of 20%. I want this to be educative as well. So I know some of you have been regularly coming to our sessions that we have facilitated for you in the gym. But for those of you that are new to this or missed some of those sessions, as we go along the way, I want to explain the whys. Why are we doing certain things? It's not just the whats or the hows, but as Simon Sinek says, start with why. So if I can help you understand the why we are doing certain things, that's going to give you more engagement. So I want to drive up motivation, drive up engagement throughout this process so that you guys can get the most out of it, have a better understanding of self-care, taking care of your own body, and then running with this. No pun intended. So taking what you learn, why you do it, into not just your running performance, but also your everyday life and how your body performs. So that's the introduction. That's how we're going to start our strength performance bracket. As a model, as EXOS, we are what we call a pillar first model. So our pillar, as some of you are familiar with, is the main axis of strength in your body. So we talk about the trunk, the core. We go beyond the core into pillar, which also includes the hip and shoulder girdles. The trunk is the anchor. We use the analogy of shooting a cannon out of a canoe. If we're to do this, the canoe isn't very stable. We're not going to get very good results from the cannon. But if we shoot that cannon from a large, strong, stable vessel, we're going to get much better performance results. So we deal in terms of pillar first. We talk about that proximal stability to drive distal mobility, but it's also an inverse relationship. So we go from the pillar to produce force, but then on impact into the ground, we go from those distal segments, in the case of running, the feet and the ground, to absorb force back into the pillar. So it works this down and up fashion of producing and absorbing force. We know that the body works in a sling-like mechanism. So we know we run and walk with opposite arm and leg. So as I produce force into the ground, that is going to travel through the body, through this diagonal sling, into the opposite arm. And then when I throw that arm back down, that force is going to transfer back down to the body. So it's this sling-like mechanism in diagonal movements. So that's going to be a key part of what we do as well. On top of that, as well as the pillar first model, we also want to talk in terms of global movement themes. So I alluded to it a little bit there as opposites, and I can give you a great example here. If we look at the hip, if I talk about hip flexion, so as I'm taking my flight and I'm going into hip flexion, same as if I was to squat and I'm going into hip flexion, what I'm getting at that hip joint, as well as flexion, is a relative internal rotation. So the femur, the thigh bone, internally rotates relative to the pelvis. So flexion plus internal rotation is a global movement theme. Conversely, extension, so as I push the ground away and my hip goes into extension, i.e. I'm coming out of a squat or I'm in my running stride, I'm also creating a force of external rotation because I'm coming away from the internal rotation to externally rotate as well as extend. So flexion and internal rotation, extension and external rotation. These are our global movement themes, and these are the fundamentals of all human movement. So it happens in lower and upper body segments. Same at the shoulder as the arm drives. Same at the hip as we produce and absorb the force into the ground. Absorption of force is going to be key. I'm sure you've heard this before many, many times. But as we run and as we impact the ground, multiple times your body weight in equivalent force is traveling through your body. So we want to make sure that you're able to absorb that force, not only to utilize it as energy in that diagonal sling to be more economical and more efficient in your running stride, in your running style, but also to reduce risk of injury. So if we can effectively dissipate that force, we're not going to get as much impact through the joints. We're going to be able to deal with that better, reduce injury risk. So that's where the absorption of force, the performance, weigh up the balance comes into it. We also want to ensure posture. So posture is a key element of everything that we do. But we have a saying that where the body bends, the power ends. So if I'm running with poor posture as I'm impacting the ground, that force may be traveling well, kinetically linking through the lower body. But then as I go into this run like grandma position, as I sometimes call it, that force is going to dissipate. Where the body bends, the power ends, and it's not going to be as effective at traveling back into the ground. So there's the overview. I talked a lot there for the first 10 minutes of the session, but I wanted to do that to give you guys a greater picture, a greater understanding of what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve. So now the movement. Whenever we do these sessions, If you guys want to get a little bit of music going, go ahead, play your own playlist. We've all got different music tastes. Maybe you wouldn't like mine. And I think if I played my music, it would be difficult for you to hear me instructing you on top of that anyway. So no music from me, but go ahead, make your own playlists to keep you motivated as we go through the session. Always ensure you've got some water with you because we want to stay hydrated. It's not always that we're going to get the heart rate up and get all sweaty and warm. You guys will make of it as you wish. You will make this workout as hard or as easy as you like, but it's not designed to break you down. It's designed to build you up. And from time to time, we'll use a little bit of equipment. So maybe we'll use a towel, a bag with some books in, who knows. But I will give you guys the heads up to prepare if we're going to use any around the house equipment. So let's start. Let's start with the pillar, and let's start with our pillar 101. So you're going to lay down on the ground, and that's all the space that you're going to need so that you can lay down on the floor. And the first thing I want you to do is bring your heels towards your bottom in this hook lying position. We're going to focus on the pelvis because this is our main focus today, lower body. And I want you to rock your pelvis to the extremes. So if your pelvis, your hips were a bucket of water, we can tip water out to the back or out to the front. So you're going to tuck your tail under and then go the other way, lifting your butt towards your back. So you get that little rock in, that control of the pelvis. Just familiarize yourself with those end ranges. And I want you to find that middle point. That middle point, when we're laying down here, is roughly neutral spine. When we're in that position, if you give your tummy a little tap, already you created a little bit of tension. So the core now is slightly braced on a low level, so we're able to stabilize this neutral position. Keep your hands here on your hips, just lightly, so you can feel for any movement. And all I want you to do is raise your right knee and then back down. So remember, this is hip flexion, and there's a relative internal rotation. Are you able to maintain that stable neutral pelvis in this number one position? So we're supine, we're laying down. This is the easiest position of all to maintain that stability. We're going to go over next, and this is just getting you familiar with the concepts of neutral into a kneeling quadruped position. So I want you to place your knees at hip height and hip width, your wrists at shoulder height and shoulder width. Same thing, work that pelvic tilt. So tuck under, lift up. So we're twerking a little bit. And just work to find that neutral point somewhere around the middle. Again, tummy tap, it's switched on. There's some tension already there. And we're just going to work the lower body. We go left leg first. I want you to push back. I don't worry about up. We're not forcing the heel up into the sky. We're pushing back. And just alternate on each. We're trying to do this without any movement at the hips. So am I able to maintain that pillar control as I go into single leg extension? Think of this as a running stride. Flexion on the down leg, extension on the up leg. Push back. Common errors here is to raise, and you see I lose that neutral position at the spine. So it's push, push. So that is our quadruped position. We can come up then and lose the base of support from the hands and just go into a tall kneeling position. So two knees. Do the same thing. Tuck, lift. Work to find your middle, your neutral position. Tummy tap test, we're switched on. As I'm doing this, now I'm working with gravity a little bit as well. So we want to be as tall as possible. So imagine you have your jacket zipped up nice and high, right up to your chin. And all we're going to do here is a simple hip hinge. So I'm going to go into hip flexion. I'm going to sit my butt down to my heels. And as you go into this position, there's going to be a positive angle at your torso, at your trunk, which is effectively giving us the hip flexion and internal rotation. But again, are you able to maintain that neutral spine? So I should be able to draw a straight line from your head through your ear, shoulder, down into your hip. And then rise back up, tall. Are you still in that neutral position? Hinge, sit your butt down to your heels, extend, belt buckle comes forward. We'll just do a few reps. So again, just grasping that understanding of hip hinge, hip flexion, hip extension, maintaining that neutral spine. Super easy concept, but we need to grasp it to understand where these movements are going. We can go from tall kneeling to half kneeling and do similar, but we're going to go straight up to our feet. We do a lot of work from the base position. So when I'm working out, when I'm exercising, when we are training together, we're going to do base position a lot. So your base position is your ready position. Feet around shoulder width, maybe slightly wider. You want your toes to be pointing straight forward. And then you're going to sit your hips back. Little hinge, but I'm also going soft knee. So this is very similar to what we just did in the kneeling position. A little bit of physics. You want your center of mass, which is going to be somewhere between the base of your sternum and your belly button, to be directly over your base of support. And in this bilateral two-leg stance, that base of support is going to be right in the middle of your feet. So mid-foot is where we have our weight distributed. Feel that. And this is the good thing about having your shoes off. Feel the ground. So is your weight distributed forward or is it back onto your heels? One of the things about going back onto your heels is in any exercise, any movement, that load is going to be distributed through your lower back, and we're risking increased back pain and injury through there. If our weight is distributed forward, then we're going to get a little bit more of a trunk lean potentially, and that force distributed more into the knees. So base of support, center of mass. And all we want to be able to do in this position with our neutral spine is just weight shift. So I want you to shift your weight. We did this in mobility on Monday, across to your left. Now the same thing applies. My center of mass is over my base of support. But now it's more like the middle of my foot, or just slightly in from that middle of my foot. Imagine a straight line coming down here. And my arms counteract this as well. Then I can come back to my ready position, my base, and go the other way. So I look a little like a speed skater, right? But I am going from one side to the next, frontal plane, so lateral movements, hip flexion. Look how my body turns to facilitate that position. Internal rotation at the hip, diagonal sling. We're just moving across. And it's just a very slight movement, but we're going to go to about 80% of your weight on one side. When you're there, hold it. And that leg, which has only got about 20% of your weight, I want you to tap diagonally behind. So go at a 45-degree angle, roughly, to just tap your toe to the ground. Now, this is a weird position for runners who are used to going in a linear fashion, but think of what we're achieving again. Hip flexion, hip internal rotation, stable, neutral spine. This looks a little bit like a running stride, but at an angle. We're challenging different planes of movement. We're going to come back in, tap it out. We're going to stay here. We're going to do 5 taps. This quad, so the quad of the stable leg, may start to burn a little. 4, 5. When you've done your 5, weight shift across to the other side. Same thing again. Draw that imaginary line down. Center of mass over base of support. 80% weight, 45-degree tap behind. You can get the arms going and a little running action as well. But you may find that as you do that, as you step in, stability goes a little. So if you want, you can just keep your arms there, working flexion, internal rotation angles. And then back. Stand it up. Let's do it again. Base position. So repetition is going to be the key. Shift across. 5 taps. Now, do you still have a neutral spine? Or are you now starting to lift your chest into hyperextension, sticking your butt up like a duck? Or are you getting lazy and curling into a ball? We want neutral spine. Emblems on your shirt, visible. And you would be able to draw a straight line now down. Head, ear, shoulder, hip, knee, ankle, all the way down. Head to heel, strong as steel. Good. That is Pillow 101. So that is effectively what we're trying to achieve as we go from the ground to standing in terms of a stable position. And that proximal stability, your ability to maintain neutral pelvis, neutral spine, postural control, is going to be the base of support. It's going to be the vessel that you shoot your cannon from. So we're going to work a lot on different positions, managing that pillar position. We'll take it on a little bit. So we want to take this into some strength-based movements now. So we're just going to do 3 movements today. Ground to up, to get you used to the idea again of that flexion, internal rotation, extension, external rotation. So the one we're going to do first, we're going to go down onto the ground again. On our side is a star pattern. Familiar to some of you, whether it's from the gym or from some of our other at-home workouts. But we're going to start in extension. So we want a straight line from your head down to your knee. So some of you may find your hips sit back. I want your hips forward, elbow underneath your shoulder, and we're going to post up on the knees. So now I've got 2 straight lines, one coming this way and one coming this way. Top leg is a floater. So that's just going to mirror the bottom. And I'm going to sit my hips down and back. So you're still in this stable position, but my hips go down and back. As I do this, look at my top shoulder. It rolls in forward. What's going on at the bottom hip? Flexion, internal rotation. Comes back up. Hips go down and back. Flexion, internal rotation. To come out of that position, my hips have to go into extension and external rotation. And let's just keep it here. We're going to do 5 reps slowly. And maybe even within just those 5 reps, I know certainly for myself, you start to feel it on the outside of your butt. So your glute medius. Patrick always tells me runners need butts. When you're in trail running season and you're working multi-planar movements, there's never been a truer word spoken. Runners need butts in trail more than ever. Same on the other side then. So we get our 2 straight lines, one this way, one this way. The legs mirror each other. Hips down and back. Curl into that position. Internal reflection. External extension. Slowly, 5 reps. When you've done your 5 reps, easy peasy. We're going to go on to our front. Superman, bird dog, quadruped opposites. Such a common exercise, but done wrong so many times. So we're back in the quadruped position. Hands and knees. Find your neutral point again. Tummy tap test. You're going to raise right hand and left knee slightly off the ground. And just as we did in Pillow 101, push. So imagine you've got a wall in your front, a wall at your back, and you're pushing them away. We are not lifting up. So the way my t-shirt sits, it can be a little deceiving, but we want that neutral position and push. Come in, just hover, push. 5 times, slow and controlled. If you're doing this slowly and you're maintaining that neutral point, you're going to feel it in your core. You're going to feel that stronger element of contraction. Simple, then we do the same thing on the other side. And again, we'll just go 5 on this first round. Left hand, right leg, push. Now you can go to your end range. You can push as far away as possible. Everything stays stable, steady, and controlled. So this is focusing a little bit more on control and the flexion and extension. Whereas with our DNS, we really emphasize the internal and external rotation components. Next, we're going to come up onto our feet. If you want to use a cushion on the ground for any of this, feel free to as well. Protect your knees, make sure the surface is what you need it to be. Split squat. We're going to go into a half kneeling position. So I want you to set up close to 90 degrees at hips and knees. Shift your weight forward. Look now, I've still got the straight line from my head down to my knee. My torso, my tibia, my shin bone are relatively parallel to one another. This is the position that we want to be in. We talk about economy, efficiency, absorption and production of force across those diagonal slings. This is the optimum. And we're going to use that front leg to push yourself to the top. Less glute, more quad than this. And then the same thing. We're going to come back down, just brush the floor, push away. 5 reps, slowly down, maintaining that alignment and away. The arms in there. If you really want to, now we're working a little bit more, exaggerating the internal rotation on that front side. When you've done 5, switch, 5 the other way. Half kneeling in our setup, weight shift forward, alignment, torso and tibia parallel, push the ground away. Exaggerate the internal rotation if you wish to. So it's just going to help you produce more torque, more rotational force. And it's all about relative to the intensity that you're going to be moving at. But if we can produce higher levels of force maximally, we're able to produce higher levels of force when we're moving sub-maximally. So it's just going to help you run in all around. Back to the beginning. We're going to do those 3 movements again. DNS star, quadruped opposites, split squat. We're going to up it this time. We're going to go a little bit more endurance. Let's do 8 reps of each. As we go into the star position, same as before, if you wish to now, as well as rolling that top shoulder in a bit, you can reach forward with it. So you can really reach those fingertips. So your fingers are going as far away from your hips as possible. 8 times. Build a little bit more muscular endurance. Working, exaggerating, internal with flexion, external with extension. And then just switch. You can go this one now. If you know those 3 movements, I want you to go at your own pace. Don't rush anything. We want to be consistent. Our primary focus, remember, is your movement quality. We're always going to take quality over anything else. It's better to do 2 rounds well than 3 rounds haphazardly. When you've mastered the movements, if you want to go ahead of me, go ahead of me. We don't have to follow exactly as I'm doing. Quadruped, opposites, set up, get your neutral points, push, front and back. You come in, you never rest that knee or hand on the ground. You're just keeping everything stable. Switch sides when you've done your 8, same thing. Reset everything. Knees, hip height, hip width. Wrists, shoulder height, shoulder width. Stable as we go to a less stable position. And if I had laser pointers or headlights coming from my hips, they're going to point straight to the ground. We're trying to avoid any rotation here. An opening of the hips. We're going to keep them closed. 8 reps. Back up onto your feet then. Split squats. So we'll start down on the ground. Go this way so you can see. Roughly 90. Take your time. Get the positions right. And now we can push the ground away. Exaggerate the rotation if you wish. Now again, benefit of doing this with body weight is that we can exaggerate that rotation. We're not going to do this in the gym with a barbell up our back. It's just not good for your spine. But when we're doing this at home, body weight movements, what a great way to get the body ready. 8 on each side. Same thing when you've switched. Take your time to set up. Get your alignments. Get your parallel lines. Exaggerate now. So we're going to get a greater carryover, a greater transfer into our actual work. Shake it off. At this point, if you need to take a drink, take a break, go ahead and do that. What I want you to do is just one more round. Third and final round, and we'll wrap it up for today. Simple introduction. I'm talking, you're going. It's hard to exercise and talk at the same time. So I'm just going to keep refreshing what we've done. Remember, as you do this, pillar first. Performance, absorption, power and absorption. Global movement themes. Hip flexion, shoulder flexion, any flexion with internal rotation. Extension with external rotation. Those are the global movement themes that we're working at. Multiplanar movements. Linear, lateral, rotational. 3 planes of movement. We are a 3-dimensional being. Even if I was just running in a straight line on the track, I'm still moving in a 3-dimensional way, as I showed you when my arms are moving, working that diagonal sling effectively. There's always a coupled rotation with flexion extension. And that proximal stability is going to create distal mobility. So it's going to create a better distal performance and a better whole body performance. So as you wrap up that third round, there's a lot of information there that I've provided you with today, but some simple movements. You can practice what we did with a pillar 101. So going from laying on the ground to quadruped to kneeling to the standing base position, and there will be work where we go from that base bilateral stance to a single leg stance. So we will develop that on further in terms of our pillar 101. That is our progression. And then 3 simple movements. So yeah, the DNS star pattern. DNS, by the way, dynamic neuromuscular stability. It's a mouthful. Just remember the star pattern is a great way of exaggerating the internal rotation with flexion and driving out of it. Then we've got the stability of the quadruped opposites. And then finally, the more dynamic compound movement of a split squat. Simple things done savagely well. Let's be the masters of our own movement, the masters of our own strength. If we can nail these simple things, your life out on the trail, out on the road, out on the track is going to be a lot easier in terms of the progressions that you're going to make. You're already doing enough to get fitter, to run faster, to run further. Remember our aim? Make sure you can do it. So if we can keep you healthy, if we can lower your risk of injury, if we can make you a more efficient animal, everything's going to fall in place. Guys, as always, I'm open to your questions. So if you have any questions, feel free. You can either place them down here in the comments box. You can email me directly. It's dthomas@teamexos.com. And I'll be happy to facilitate those questions either by email, or we can even arrange some time to jump on a virtual call and do a little 15-minute consultation. Give me a little bit break from doing some other stuff. Thank you for joining me. I hope you took a lot from it today. We're going to build, we're going to progress on this. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay fit. I'll see you back here on Monday for a little bit more of a recovery focus. Thank you for your time today. See you soon.